Welcome to the Unwritten Life Podcast, where we share that your deepest pain can lead to your biggest gain, and that your story is still unwritten. Now introducing your host, Tim Sawhook.
Welcome to the show today, everybody. It's so excited to have you here for another episode of the Unwritten Life Podcast. Guys, we have a great episode here for you today. We're really excited to share this with you. It's another one that I told you it's always going to bring you hope and encouragement. And I hope that when you guys hear these podcasts every week, that you do leave with a sense of hope. And I use the word hope and hope and hope and hope over and over again. But it's what the whole purpose of the podcast is about, that your story is unwritten and that there's hope for you for your future. So I hope as you hear these podcasts, that you take them with you and they don't just end in your car, end in your earbuds, that you take it, kind of resonate with it, the message and the people that are on here sharing their vulnerable stories, sharing them for you to offer hope and not for you just to keep it to yourself, but to pay it forward to someone else and to maybe use your own story in your everyday life. And I think that's very important, and I'm very thankful for the people that have been on and able to do that. Like I've talked about before, I still want to hear from you guys. If you guys are feeling it in your heart, you're loving the show, please leave a written review, leave a rating on iTunes. So if people like you enjoy it, it offers it that to be in the feed for other people so they can see it, they can enjoy it, and walk away with that message of encouragement for them in their day as well. So again, if you guys are feeling it, you're enjoying the show, I would appreciate it. So would all the people who have been on the show to share their stories and share their message with other people and to kind of continue paying it forward over and over again. Like I said at the beginning, we have another great episode, and I'm going to get into it right away. Here is my conversation with Will Peddie. Well, I'd like to welcome Will Peddie to the show today. Will, how are you doing today?
Good, Tim. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Once I heard about your story from Candace, and she told me to talk to you, and then we spoke on the phone about a month ago or so, I knew that your story is going to be one that's really going to offer hope to people and really make them feel normal with their struggles. And so I'm proud of you, and I'm thank you for coming on to share your story.
It's an honor to be here, and it's kind of a cool thing for us to be able to have gone through now and be able to share for other people to hopefully get a little bit of encouragement and hope out of.
Absolutely. Well, like I ask everybody at the beginning of every podcast, tell me about your story, your life a little bit before Carter came on the scene.
Yeah, sure. So my wife and I got married in 2011. I was working at a college. I was running a college football program at the time. And so life was fun and busy and exciting and crazy. We got married in 2011, and my wife was pregnant in 2012. Carter was born in 2012, so it was a pretty quick adjustment. So we were, all excited and nervous and scared and happy and all that stuff bundled up at once at the same time, kind of. But yeah, it was a really exciting time, and we were young and living in Southern California. The dreams were happening and all that kind of stuff. And then Carter was born in November of 2012.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward pregnancy. My wife did end up having a C-section just because the doctors thought that Carter was going to be breached and just the amount of time she went into labor. So, but, nothing crazy, pretty straightforward. And, nothing was stressful with that, at least for my wife. I didn't know what was going on, so it's a little bit of a crazy experience when you hear they're cutting your wife open to take the baby out. You're like, what?
Yeah, absolutely. What was it like during the pregnancy? You said it was pretty normal. So were you guys, if you guys got married a year later, you're pregnant. What was it like during that whole pregnancy? Were you guys super excited? Were you nervous about having a baby? What was it like?
I think both. One, excited and nervous because we both wanted kids, so that was a no-brainer. That was not a challenge, but it happened, fairly fast into our marriage, and so we were like, all right, let's, kind of, here we go, So that was kind of all the same. Literally, we're excited, we're nervous, we're like, oh my gosh, like this is happening, like get ready. So we were trying to keep it as normal as possible and not have, life, be crazy. I was really busy with my job. Working, so we just try to keep it as normal as possible, and until she ended up having Carter, and so life, I would say, was pretty normal for a young married couple. Really nothing crazy happened. in our lives. We had family close by, so
Right.
really everything was pretty normal, I would think.
Pretty normal. So as Carter was born, you had the C-section and stuff. Let me ask you back in the story. What was it like when you finally got to see Carter for the first time after all the anticipation?
It's so it's so like surreal, because your wife, you get almost comfortable and accustomed to your wife having this huge belly, and okay, yeah, there's a baby in there, it's like you feel the kicking, and it becomes a normal way of life for 9 months, give it. And so seeing her and holding her and watching them clean her off, it just kind of like time froze, and I'll never forget the surgeon. The doctor came in and he's scrubbing up, and he goes, "Hey, Dad, come here," and he goes, "It's gonna be straightforward. C-sections happen all the time. Don't worry. Nothing to be panicked or worried about." He said, "But whatever you do, don't look over the curtain." And so I said, "Doc, you got it. No worries there." I was like eyeball to eyeball with Jenny.
I wouldn't have looked over the curtain either. Both my kids were born normal pregnancy, no C-section, but I don't think I could have come back from that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So she cleaned her off. She looked as beautiful, God's gift, I'm sure. And
yeah, totally.
You were sure you were happy there. You said so things were pretty normal early on. So where does her story start to evolve a little bit with Carter?
So her story starts getting interesting about a month, to be honest with you. At about a month, 3 weeks or so, she caught what is called RSV, which is a respiratory syncytial virus. Mm-hmm. And to any toddler or young child, it just looks like a cold, maybe kind of a more intense cold, head and maybe even flu-like symptoms.
Is that pretty common?
It can be, sure.
Okay.
But she caught it at 3 weeks old, so her immune system was, just weak, and so it hit her harder, and it took her a long time to kind of recover from it. But we had no idea what was going on. So one morning, my wife is breastfeeding her, mm-hmm. and she started to suffocate on her breast milk, and so it was one Friday morning that I just, for some reason, was casually going into the office, about 9 o'clock or so. I didn't have to be there super early, which I usually had to be. And so she calls me back. I'm literally outside the house. She calls me back and says, "Hey, Carter's acting funny. You come back in." Mm-hmm. And so I come back inside, and she's blue and purple and just suffocating, like lifeless.
Oh, wow.
Which was like another totally surreal moment, like life flashing before your eyes. Time to go, right. and instincts just kick in. I did a little infant CPR, just put her in my foot over my arm and started kind of pounding on her back. She gasped for air a couple of times, so I just said, "Hey, grab your stuff. We're going to the hospital right now." There was a medical hospital, not too far away, so we're just like, "Let's go." I believe she had a handful of other of those suffocating episodes.
Okay.
And so what basically happens with RSV is that your esophagus, tongue, etc. swell, just kind of how you get normally sick, and you get a secretions increase of saliva, of mucus. So those two things kind of paired with breast milk and her just kind of probably being sleepy from being sick,
right.
she was choking. And so that happened again. We were in the emergency room because the doctors were just going to check her out, get her vitals. Okay, let's see what's going on. Mm-hmm. And it happened again, and she was like, a bluish purple hue that was just like, whoa, what's happening? The medical team rushed in. Doctors are, putting the oxygen tubes down her throat, pumping oxygen in her. Mm-hmm. It was a pretty crazy, never forget life-impacting moment,
Let me ask you a couple questions about that. That time that you ran back into the house and you saw her like that, I'm sure time slowed down for a second, but what was your first initial thought when you saw her blue and purple and not breathing?
You know what? It just was like, my first instinct was to just do the CPR because I thought, okay, she's choking. So that was like the first thing. And then it was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, that's intense. Like, that's not normal. So it was like immediately CPR, immediately a hospital. Like, that was just it. It was like, forget everything else. We're going now.
Right. Okay. And then the second question I had was, you said she had stopped breathing there and at the hospital. How long did she not breathe for? Was it a long period of time? Just seconds?
It was seconds, but it felt like 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was enough time for, the doctors, especially in the ER, for the doctors to be, what I felt was very concerned and,
Right.
Pretty intensely reactive to it. So yeah, it was pretty significantly traumatizing, emotionally overwhelming, all that stuff.
So when they did whisk her away after that time, they wanted to do more things with her. What was going on between you and Jenny at that moment? Were you guys talking about anything? Were you all just kind of like run with them?
We were just standing outside in the hallway. We could look into the room, and I just remember shaking, kind of just like in disbelief. And Jenny we were just standing right next to each other, silent. Kind of it just felt like everything was on, frozen in time, and it was just like them doing their thing. And I was like, what is happening? Like, you have no answers, you have no information. Right. You can't even digest the information that is going on. So it just was one of the most, if not the most intense situations I've ever been in, for sure.
Did anything go through your mind at that moment, or maybe you and Jenny thinking, oh my God, we could lose Carter right now?
Yeah, man, for sure. I thought, like, she can't die, that type of a thing. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of where our faith in God kicked in, and it was just like we needed to trust and let this not be our gauge of understanding, because we'll just throw ourselves into panic mode, and we'll throw ourselves into the craziest and worst thoughts of what the outcomes could be. So it was I really tried to shut myself up, if you will, as much as possible. Yeah. And just hold Jenny's hand and just, kind of let go of that kind of panic, scared. Although I definitely was, but, I just was like, man, this is happening for a reason, let it happen. So.
Can you speak to how important it is to have a faith at some period like that, when it's out of your control, it's out of your hands, how important it is to have God's grace and faith to kind of come calm you and be with you in that moment?
Man, it was everything. It just, we go through trials and tribulations. We have our ups and downs through life. Life's never easy. Some people are, super blessed, whether it's financially or in family life and whatever it may be. Another struggle, long times. And so I think if you don't have, for us, I grew up in church, and I definitely walked away from my faith for a long time, and just being able to come back to that, it was just signs that, God is real, and my faith is real, and it was purposeful. Just to be able to have that, it was weird. It was definitely like a peace, but a peace within this storm of crazy, hectic chaos. You know what I mean? And so both my wife and I are strong believers, and really base our lives and our actions and stuff off our faith. And so I think just having that allowed us to be able to maneuver and navigate this situation much differently than we would if not. You almost have this supernatural, makes no sense kind of calm and peace, even though your heart's pounding out of your chest, even though your head's thinking crazy things. So for us, man, it was just a backbone of stability that we could just kind of rest on and just be like, okay, this is crazy. This is not what we asked for. It's not what we signed up for, but it's happening for a reason. Let's just kind of trust that this is going to have a greater impact or greater purpose that we don't, that we can't understand.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's a great explanation. Thanks for answering that question.
Yeah.
So what's happening next? You see her, you guys are outside in the hallway. You see her. What's going on?
Yeah. So she was sent to the NICU, the neurointensive care unit, neonatal, sorry. So she was intubated, which means breathing tubes, kind of like an IV drip, feeding tube, if you will. She was still on fluid, so it wasn't like a real feeding tube, and hooked up to antibiotics. She had a PICC line in, so she was kind of on that for 12 days, just to fight the infection, fight the RSV, just because she couldn't, and she was so out of it from the lack of oxygen and all that stuff. So we tried to keep it as normal as possible. We were in the hospitals basically overnight for 12 days. On the 12th day we went home. So it was crazy. It was eye-opening, and it was just a whole new world of what happens a lot, and that's another thing that was kind of crazy to see was just how needed and purposeful those parts of a hospital are, whether they're neonatal or pediatric ICUs. Of course, you know, for me, it was like ICU. Oh yeah, you know, intensive care unit. That's when, you know, people car accidents or that stuff has happened.
Yeah.
But just for the kids, it's like, wow, this is crazy because anything can literally happen to anyone. And I mean, we had some amazing nurses. So it was just another really educational learning piece to life. And so that happened. Came home and just kind of things got a little bit, you know, normal, balanced out, if you will. And obviously we were like, you know, hawks over Carter, noticing, you know, every little thing, which was stressful, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But so, you know, as time progressed and as, you know, months, you know, days turned into weeks turned into months, we felt, you know, okay, things are kind of normalizing a little bit. But
was she healed when she came home from the?
She had the virus was, you know, being fought off. So she had gotten antibiotics. She had kind of gotten a little bit stronger. She was breathing better, and she started feeding. Jenny was able to breastfeed her again in the hospital. So that was really, really good.
So Carter was a fighter.
Yeah, definitely. So she started to come out on top, and you know, she was doing breathing treatment. She was getting, you know, antibiotics all throughout the night, whatever it was. So yeah, it was. She definitely had a plan that she was, you know, fighting through.
Awesome. So now that you're home with her, you said you guys are kind of watching over her like a hawk, which I couldn't imagine, especially those episodes of her not breathing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How was she starting to develop? Did life go back to normal for you guys for a while?
As much as we thought it was normal, yeah. And then about a year hit, and my wife especially, just because we have nieces and nephews and, you know, and friends with babies, she just was noticing that, you know, Carter wasn't really sitting up. Carter wasn't really, didn't have a really strong crawl or anything like that. So almost had like a lethargic just kind of vibe with her.
Right.
And so, okay, this is, you know, maybe she's just a late bloomer, understand, you know, kids kind of develop on their own.
Right.
Some kids are different. Every kid is different.
Sure.
So that's when my wife, Jenny, kind of started really keeping an eye on her. And then even started asking questions just with family and friends on, hey, what, you know, should this be happening? And then she started, you know, it's scary, but also very helpful to have, you know, the internet at your fingertips and be able to research stuff, you know, because you can read scary stuff, but at the same breath, you can also find out some really awesome tips and advice and resources. So
stay away from WebMD. It will just tell you that you're already dead. Everyone's going to die. That's the outcome every single time.
Right. So we, through that process and that kind of time from a year to maybe a year and a half, we thought, hey, let's go, you know, let's ask her pediatrician. Let's kind of see. So we asked pediatrician what might be going on. She's like, you know, that makes sense. It's a valid question. Let's get some tests. Let's maybe see some specialists. So we saw some like initial visits with pediatric geneticist, pediatric neurologist, just see, hey, what could there be a lasting effect? Could something else be going on? And about when she was 2 years old, some of the specialists thought, okay, maybe there's some cerebral palsy effects from the lack of oxygen, you know, a little brain damage. That could make sense.
Right.
So like, okay, that resonates with us. Maybe let's look into that.
Right.
I actually went and saw a friend of my dad's that runs a pediatric neurological kind of center at one of the universities in Southern California. You know, they focus on everything from autism to kind of anything neurological, developmental related with children. And so he, you know, acknowledged the cerebral palsy. That could be it, he said, but he also thought that there might be something more kind of underlying and deeper. And so we're like, okay, he gave us a couple suggestions. And one of them was to go and ask, you know, some of these specialists about getting what they call an exome sequencing test, which basically maps out her entire genetic code.
Wow.
And it was a process to get that approved and get her, you know, going with. It's an expensive test, and so you have to kind of file for Medi-Cal and kind of do that whole process. Finally got it, performed, got the test. And I remember that was probably when she was 2.5 or 3. She's 5 now. So,
okay.
Everything's still kind of new, but,
Sure.
it's still normalizing. But I remember sitting with the pediatric neurologist and going over the results.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts talking and is like, yeah, we mapped out everything. The result, we saw fine-tooth combed everything. We found one genetic deletion on her 5th chromosome. A protein called the pure alpha protein is missing. And so she has, that's the only thing off. She has that very specific genetic deletion, if you will. So I remember him handing me a packet of a study that had been done on, I think it was 5 or 6 or 7 kids from I think 1 or 2 years old to 13. And he was like, this is kind of all that has been published in medical journals.
Oh, geez.
Not really sure what to tell you.
Right.
At the same time, we had also started looking into occupational speech physical therapies, just from what our pediatrician has suggested. So we had either just started that or we're starting that right when that kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, but then he was kind of like, I don't really know what else to tell you. Keep doing what you're doing and just monitor and watch. And so we're like, okay.
Well, let me ask you.
On.
Let me ask you a few questions about all this. So this is a period of time now. It's 2.5 years. You've gone through a bunch of stuff. I'm sure you've had conversations between the two of you about what's going on, maybe what's not going on. You hear that she may have cerebral palsy, and
right.
You're processing all of that. Let me ask you a question about that. When you started to hear that, okay, maybe during this time she may have suffered a little bit of brain damage, a little cerebral palsy and stuff. How did that hit you as parents, hearing this kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's kind of like, man, really? Is this happening? This isn't what we signed up for. What does this mean? Is this going to be, what would life look like now? What are we going to have to, face and struggle with and go through now? And it's kind of ironic. My wife, I love her to death, and she is an amazing, strong, independent. I could not do what she does. She's definitely been graced and, blessed to be able to navigate and steward our family and Carter's, all the things that come with Carter's situation. But, we each kind of wanted 4 kids, and we each, a child with special needs is it's a scary thing, and so it's sure, I don't want that. That's kind of funny that, my wife actually used to pray to not have a kid with special needs, and she'll talk about that because that can be, that can come off sounding horrible,
Right. Yeah.
But it's just an ironic way of how God works that now she has a special needs kid, and he has evolved into this champion and captain of this life and journey that we're on. You know what I mean? And so
that's amazing.
At first it was really guilt ridden for her. And so I couldn't even begin to explain some of the emotional journey that she's been on. I try to understand it as much as possible.
Right.
But that's a real thing, especially for mothers. Just the extra emotional kind of degree that is just involved with anything with their kids. You know what I mean? So,
let me ask you this: being a parent of a child with special needs and stuff like that, how could something like that affect a marriage? It adds an amount of stress, anxiety, pressure that you can't prepare for. You can't really navigate through on your own. You know what I mean? I found that we have been needing so much support, which we've gotten from family and friends, which has been amazing. But there are times when you didn't feel that, and there are times when you've had a long day or you're exhausted or whatever, and it puts strain, you know what I mean? And you say things you don't mean, and let alone have a baby dealing with this. And then, we had another child. Wyatt was born a 1.5, 2 years later. Okay.
So those add degrees of intensity to a marriage that really, make you act ways you wouldn't normally act. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That type of stuff.
Yeah, marriage is hard enough on its own without any extra craziness thrown in. But to have that, because I was wondering, because I know a lot of parents. My wife, she's been a special ed teacher for 18 years, and now she teaches at a college level with stuff. But so we've seen a lot of families with all kinds of different needs over the years, and I've seen different struggles and divorces and things happen because it's so intense. And so I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were about, how that's an added stress, and it can be tough.
It is, and that's another thing where our faith just has been such a blessing for us, because we've even talked about, hey, I can understand how, because I'm going to quote this wrong, but there's some kind of a statistic with parents and divorce in a marriage with children with special needs, and I 100% understand that. That can be a real thing easily, I think. And we've even talked about it, and like, if we didn't have this faith and this relationship with God and Jesus Christ, we would be at odds with each other. We would be not friends. We wouldn't be in love. You know what I mean? We would be like, we'd say things neither one of us meant that would just tear us apart. So it's heartbreaking, and it's sad and unfortunate, but that is a real thing, that level of stress to a marriage can really do damage, I would say.
Yeah, I think we could all be thankful for God's grace in all these situations,
For sure.
Definitely. Let me ask you one more question about, you were talking about when you ran that big test to map out everything. You talked about finances and expenses and stuff. What is it like as a parent with special needs and all these things? Because I know you want everything for your kids. You want the best tests, the best treatments. What kind of financial stresses happens?
It does happen, because you never know what you're not doing, or you never know what else you could be doing more. So there are resource programs out there, whether it's regional centers that kind of help facilitate therapies and other needs. There's also different things that parents can look into, whether it's state-based or national, on a government level-based resource programs. But at the same breath, like our horse therapy that we send her to is all out of pocket, but we've felt that she's had the most response and growth and development based off of that. She goes 2 times a week. And that has been amazing. But there's financial additions that you can't foresee. And that's just kind of life now, and whether it's appointment costs or, test costs or whatever. But, it's a no-brainer. And for us, it's, it's stuff we just
have to
have. Yeah.
All right. Well, no, I wanted to hear that because I know a lot of families struggle with that, and I know it can be expensive to get into these places, even to try to get into a place like the Shea Center, which we can talk about later, to probably even get on a list to get in to be able to have these services done. It's a lot of stress financially and physically, mentally, and all that stuff, emotional. So to jump back into your story, I wanted to talk about, so he hands you this packet where he kind of says, good luck, keep doing what you're doing. What happened next?
We kind of just did that. We were like, okay, she was literally doing 2 physical therapy, 2 occupational therapy, and 2 speech therapy sessions a week. She wasn't in school or anything like that yet, so that was kind of all going on. And then when she hit 3 or 4, I'm a little off on that. We did get her into preschool, and so that opened our doors and our lives to the whole public education, special needs program, the independent education program, or IEP, that becomes reality and normal. So that we've had to fight, and I say fight not as a straight aggressive way, but you have to stand firm, and you have to repeat yourself, and you have to not always give in to what other people are suggesting. As much of an expert as they may be, you know your kid the best. You're around them the most. So we've had to fight for resources and programs through that, and make sure that she gets as much added resources and stuff like that through her schooling. Because some special needs programs around different Public school districts are really good and are amazing, and others struggle or are lacking or don't have resources, and that's just
True.
the reality of that. So we just tried to make it as normal as possible. It was a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
It was not what we had planned for or thought of or were familiar with, but we had to somehow create a consistency with that to, just have a better psychological kind of presence with it,
Right.
and not feel like everything was a new thing, was a new wave on the ship ride. You know what I mean? Like we just
Right.
had to try to steer the course as straight as we could. And
Right.
so, we'd take suggestions and we'd, do other specialist tests, but we really tried to create, especially for Carter also, to be able to create some kind of familiarity. She doesn't do well with the,
Yeah.
So introducing new people and new settings and that type of a thing there's always a 1 to 2 week kind of grace period that we say that she just, is uncomfortable and she just takes time. So yeah, we tried to make it as much kind of normal and consistent as possible with therapies and then school. So we always kind of come to a new adjustment phase, whether it's like every year or every couple of years, so, that just kind of becomes the new normal.
Yeah. Well, you had shared with me, and I'm going to put this in our show notes when your episode goes live, a couple of videos that really told a little story about Carter and her impact. And one of the things that I remember you saying in the video, which I think was really cool, and if you could speak to that, was that when you found out she had this special needs, she had the PurA syndrome, is that you didn't think of it as a burden necessarily, but you thought that God chose you as a steward for Carter. What did that mean to you when you kind of said that when you were feeling that?
I just felt that, like, I could look at this and be like, man, life sucks. This sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want this. I don't want to deal with this. This isn't fair. All that type of stuff. I could have felt so sorry for myself, so sorry for Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
But then in doing that would get robbed of just the joy and purity of life and the blessings that come out of having Carter in our lives. And I just felt that was wrong, and I felt that was selfish. And so, I'm not saying it wasn't emotional, and I'm not saying it wasn't stressful, because it was all of those things.
Sure.
And it was, doubtful, and it was unbelievable, and it was all that stuff. But in the same breath, it also became like a championing cause for us to have, right? It also became an opportunity for us to love, share, and support with other people that we see that struggle with, that might be a single parent going through something like this. That might be a newly married first child type of a situation.
Right.
It became just kind of like a badge of honor that, hey, our daughter is amazing. She's literally 1 in a million. She's as unique as you can be. Why not let this be kind of like, an uplifting? Why not choose that? Why not let that be something that could have a ripple effect, that could have an impact? Because, we see Carter, and she just pierces our hearts every day when she just looks into our eyes, and she just, she's nonverbal, so she doesn't speak, but she says so much with her touch and her eyes and her smiles. It's just like, I always hear, and many people might hear just of the stories of people just being just destroyed and just, overcome with guilt and sadness when they deal with things. And maybe they that forces them to turn to crutches, drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be. We just felt that, like, we weren't meant to go through this for that reason, or for that outcome. There was some kind of calling on this situation that we didn't understand, we didn't know. And so, we just chose, and not easily chose, but we chose to have it be a positive and have it be something that we could outwardly show to people that, life doesn't always need to be bad. Life doesn't always suck. You know what I mean? Like, it's a choice we all have.
That's awesome. I love how you talked about that. And in the story in the video, I like how you guys really don't focus a lot about her disability. That's not what makes her special, not her needs. What makes her special is that she's God's gift to you guys. She's your daughter, and she inspires other people. Can you talk a little bit about the people who ran the marathon?
Yeah, so there's a couple in our church, Ingrid and Wellington, that we love so much. And they met Carter just a couple of times on Sundays, and they're going, they go through, as everyone does, their own situations and stuff, and Ingrid just felt so impacted by Carter's just joy and attitude and just the aura about her, that she just felt inspired to run a marathon on her 40th birthday. And so I was like, yeah, you're crazy. What? And so she kind of used it as the reason that she wanted to do that. And she wanted to make that kind of physical commitment and have it be something that she could overlook, and not overlook, but she could look through, and she could kind of, strive through her situations and her struggles because of this little girl that has so much else going on that can't talk, struggles walking, struggles with the basic everyday things that all of us can do without even thinking, you know what I mean? And so that was just, for us, it was so humbling and so like, wow, like that's crazy, first of all. But how amazing that Carter, and that was Carter on her own, man, that we didn't force the situation. We didn't, say, hey, you should do this. Nothing like that. That was all in her one-on-one alone time with Carter. So that was pretty cool, man. That was when we kind of looked at each other like, hey, this is pretty amazing. Like, and it just started happening more and more. People are like, man, Carter, just pierces my heart. And we're like, yeah, that's also, we see that all the time, but it's pretty cool to see, people coming up to us and just asking, to hear more and just holding her hand or any of that stuff. It's been really cool.
Well, I thought was amazing in that story in the marathon is that this girl wasn't a huge runner. She wasn't like, that wasn't her life, and she was in like marathons all the time. But she talked about in the story that she was struggling, and she was pretty much really behind in the marathon. She even got lost running it and didn't know where she was. But then someone came alongside her, helped her finish the race, and then she said she saw Carter. And she said that was the girl I was running for, and it just pushed her through the very end there.
Yeah, we knew she was kind of lost and was taking a long time, so we tried to go kind of backtrack through the course, and then kind of wait to see when there was like a straightaway that you could see down a while. So we went up there, and I was holding Carter, and she could see her, and then obviously just got so emotional. But then it was also super encouraging to finish, and just it was really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was an amazing story that Carter inspired her, and she did that just out of faith, and just because of this one girl, she knew that she can survive and do anything that she could finish too.
Definitely.
Let me ask you, what is Carter's determination and strength and being a fighter? What does that mean to you? What does that challenge you to do every day, knowing that she can do these things, that you can also do something?
It just really pushes me to check myself when I want to complain, or check myself when I don't want to do something. That's and it's all the time. You know what I mean? It's do I want to make the extra trip to run an errand? I don't know what it looks like, but do I want to help my wife when she needs something to get done? It just kind of reminds me that there's so many things we choose to complain about, and we choose to drag our feet through, and we choose to make harder than it really is. That if we just had a shift in mindset and a shift in thinking, we could really get through a majority, if not a lot of things that kind of struggle. We find struggle with. And so, there's different situations out there. There's more intense, there's more severe, 100%. I never want to be explaining our story and not be mindful of different degrees that people go through. But there's also still just a larger echoing, kind of element to this whole thing of having that level of determination and having that level of just push through that, maybe some people just be like, hey, here's this little girl, 5-year-old girl, has to go through so many different therapy sessions, so many different learning things, whether it's feeding and drinking and even just walking, and obviously not even talking, that I can maybe push through this week, this report, or this week of work, or this
absolutely
whatever it may be. Honestly, there's so many different reasons that people get negative and down that that's all we hope that it can Carter, just even a glimpse, just a couple minutes where you can be like, I can choose to do more. I can choose to do this.
No, that's absolutely awesome. In season 1, I had a lady on named Katie Ersta who fought through cancer and came through it. And she started a movement. It was actually a hashtag called Every Sweat Matters. And what they would do going forward is they'd go out there and work out and sweat for the people who couldn't, for the people who wish they had an opportunity to be able to do it. And the times where we get up and like, oh, I could work out today, because you can, because you're able. Think about the people who would just dreamed if they could walk, if they could, if they could fight and do it. And so hearing about Carter, it just made me think of that, about people like, push through. This little girl was putting everything in just to try to grab things and try to feed herself, try to walk. Yeah. Has a heart full of words that she wants to say, but she can't yet. Yep. Push forward. You can do it. If she can do it, you can do it. And those stories like that really blow me away. Yeah, totally. Like I ask everybody at the very end of each episode is, what kind of hope and encouragement can you offer to parents, family members, anybody who's going through something like this, has kind of felt like they've been, quote unquote, dealt this hand? What could you offer them?
I would just say that you never know what's going to happen, and you never know what tomorrow is going to look like. You never know what next week, next month, a year, 2, 3, 5 years is going to look like. So there's always a hope to have, and it could be as bleak and as far off of a glimmer of hope that you could even imagine. But it's meant. There is something there, and if we just shift a mindset of being defeated and being looking down and negative in situations, we actually are stronger and powerful enough to change that just by choosing to think a slight degree more positive or happier or anything like that. Because yes, there are situations that are really hard and are really difficult. Everything from grieving from the loss of a life to struggles with whatever it may be, any type of rehabilitation or special needs or anything. So there's always going to be struggles in life. I just think if we can kind of champion the cause of, hey, we can actually do things different, we can actually make things better, then that can change the world, man. That can really bring people out of just a mindset of struggle and a mindset of defeat and a mindset of negativity that, who knows what kind of impact can be created and forged out of that. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
If people had a can-do attitude more than this happened to me type of an attitude, then shoot, who knows what could happen in this world.
That's amazing. I don't think you could have said it any better than that. Well, it's been amazing having you on today, Will. And I know Carter's story is just going to continue the ripple effect that you talked about early on and bless people's lives and make them feel like they can do anything. If people wanted to connect with you and hear more about your story, about resources, how can they do that, Will?
We have a couple of different ways. I mean, you could always find us on social media. We have a Team Carter Facebook page.
Okay.
That's super easy to find. And then, they can find me or my wife and message us. That's super easy as well. Okay. We love telling our story. We love talking to people. So, we've kind of made that our cause to be there to support people we know or not. So, yeah.
Perfect. We'll include all that information on the show notes when the episode goes live so people can contact you. And again, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and sharing Carter's story of hope and inspiration for others.
Thanks, Tim. It's always humbling and honoring at the same time. So we're really excited to be able to do this. So thank you.
Well, I can't thank Will enough for being on the show today. I really appreciate him taking his time and kind of going back and recounting those memories about Carter's birth, about what it was like early on in those times where he saw her purple and blue and suffocating and lifeless is what he talked about. How scary that must have been at that early time. And it was about getting to the doctor right away and seeking help. But then after getting past the infection that she had and then thinking that, we're kind of out of the woods a little bit. And then as the years go by, there is, maybe some slight development issues and then wondering if it was cerebral palsy and then finding out what it really was after all that time and finally actually getting that help for Carter that she needed. And I thought it was great how he talked about how him and his wife, when things got tough there, when they weren't sure what was going on, they leaned on God. And they talked about how important that is, not just in a normal marriage and a normal relationship, how God's very important in all the foundations of things that you do, especially when things get tough and really hard, but especially when you're a parent of a special needs child, where things can, really wear on you as a couple. Things that you have to do every single day can be monotonous and hard, and it's easy to want to give up and pack it in. But they leaned on God the whole time. Even at those very early moments when they didn't know what was going on, they leaned on God. And I think that was just such a great testimony for us who are listening now, who are dealing with things that are a little less intense maybe, but just as important in your own life, to take those times, lean on God, cast all your worries on him, and he'll be there for you. So often when things go bad or, we're dealing with everyday things, we always try to do everything in our own power to fix it, right? Always. I'm guilty of it all the time. Even though I know God is waiting there, I feel like he's just right next to you all the time just saying, I'm just waiting for you to ask. I'm just waiting for you to ask. I just picture him just like tapping on his watch, like time's ticking away. And so often we just try to do things on our own power over and over again. And it's when we take that moment and we ask God for his help in those toughest times that he's there for us to come alongside us, say, be still, know that I'm God, and I'm here to carry you through. And I really appreciate Will for sharing that and using that just as a message for all of us, not just in his life and his situation, but everything that we go through and can go through in the future. I also wanted to talk about the importance of not giving up, not quitting when things are hard. Because we talked about the very end there, it really hit home for me, and I hope it hits home to the listeners today, that if you have this little girl, beautiful little daughter named Carter, who can't speak, but she works so hard all day, every day, all the therapies, all the doctor's appointments, all the things that we take for granted on a daily basis, she has to grind out every single day just to have a normal life. In the things that we go through, not to minimize anybody's struggles, those are big to you, but they may be a lot less than what she's going through. And if this little girl, this precious little bundle of joy from God, it can go through all these struggles and work so hard just to do the things we take for granted, then guess what, guys? We can too. I talk about it a lot in my classes that I teach, the physical fitness classes, that muscle is grown when you push to resistance. And then when you go a little further, that's when you get muscle. That's when you grow. And I challenge the people in my classes this same thing all the time. That's going to be the same thing in your life. Push to resistance. And then tiptoe just a little further past that, outside your comfort zone. That's where the growth is. I don't care if it's in your relationship, finances, physical fitness, and you just keep filling in those blanks. When you push past that resistance, step into the outside that comfort zone and keep working hard and not giving up, that's where you see growth. And I think Carter is a perfect example of that. She works hard every single day, and it motivates her dad, Will, to when things get tough, he sees her staring right into his soul, speaking to him, saying, don't give up. If I can do it, you can do it. And I think that's just a beautiful message. And how Carter has affected so many different people's lives. And that story about the lady who ran the marathon. I can't think of anybody I'd run a marathon for. I'd really have to think really hard who I'd run a marathon for. But this little girl had penetrated someone's heart so deeply that they wanted to do that for them, even though they had their own struggles going on. And it's just such a beautiful story. And that just because someone can't speak and they're young and they're little and they may have a disability or a condition does not mean their impact can be small. Anybody's life can impact someone else's. And that ripple effect, that paying it forward over and over again, can change the world. And I believe that. And I hope you guys believe that too. So again, I can't thank Will enough for sharing the story, sharing God's love in their life, and sharing Carter's life to encourage us to keep going, keep pushing, even when things are so tough, that this little girl who does all this hard work just to do the things we take for granted, that we can do it too. Do not give up. Your journey is worth it. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for listening like you do every single week. It means a lot to me, and I hope the message is coming out. that your story is unwritten. Anything can happen in your life. God can work miracles in your life and use your story to bless other people. And I need more stories, guys. I'm asking for it every week. I really need more stories to be on the podcast. I reach out to people to be on. I know it's intimidating and vulnerability is a big thing to come out there. But if you have a story and you think you can help somebody with it, please reach out to me. You can find me at tim@unwrittenlifepodcast.com. You can go to unwrittenlifepodcast.com there on the contact form. Email me. Leave me your story. I will be happy to read it on the air because I think everybody's story is super important, and if it can help one person, it is a win all day, every day. Please check me out on Instagram at Unwritten Life Podcast. Be in our Facebook group. That's where the conversation is going on most of the week, and that's where I talk about you guys being the heartbeat of the community, being in there, commenting, and taking part in that community, and that's the Unwritten Life Podcast group. We'd be happy to have you there. It would be my true pleasure to meet all of you and to interact with you there. So guys, we've come to the end of yet another episode, but this is not the end of your life, not the end of your journey at all. Remember, you matter. And like Carter, you can make a difference. And your story is still unwritten.